Hello, hello, Sarah of SCK Handmade here, and today I'm going to share with you another tiny Tunisian tip. Let's talk counting your rows in Tunisian crochet. It is definitely different than it is in your regular crochet, and I've gotten lots of questions about this, so let's talk about it. One of the things that's confusing is that a lot of times this first row here is called your setup row, and that's because it's worked a little differently. You don't just call it Tunisian simple stitch or whatever stitch you're doing, because you have to pull up the stitches in your starting chain. But as you can see, even though it might be called a setup row, it looks just like the rest of the rows in my fabric. And once you do that setup and your first return pass, you have completed a full row of your fabric. So that is indeed row one. As I just mentioned though, something that makes Tunisian crochet different than crochet is that it takes 2 steps to complete one row. So you have your forward pass going from right to left and your return pass going back from left to right. So once you've completed those 2 steps, you've really completed a row. But if you look here, you can see this top space here doesn't look like the rest of my rows. And that's because it's the action that I take on this row. So my next row that turns that return pass kind of down and fills in between my stitches. So if this is a row, it counts as a row. But much like knitting, you're not done with your final row until you bind off or work your next section. So if I'm counting my rows here, I find especially in Tunisian simple stitch, just counting these bars is really easy. So 1, 2, 3, 4 full rows. Again, to make this final row look like my other rows, I would either continue on if my stitch is changing or bind off to make it look like the rest of my rows. Now, a lot of times, I have really flattened out my swatch here, but a lot of times Tunisian crochet has a tendency to kind of curl in, and that's totally normal, but it does make it a little harder to count your stitches. So my actual preference is, rather than counting my rows when my hook is all the way over here on the right, I, being careful to make sure I'm not overshooting, go ahead and complete my forward pass only. And then you can see that my hook helps to hold my fabric flat. Even when I lay it down here, even if this end curls, I can hold it with my left hand, and my hook helps keep the top of my fabric flat. So I've completed 1, 2, 3, 4 full rows, and then I'm working on my 5th row because I have not completed my return pass of that one. I'll put a link in the description below about binding off. So if you're ready for that point, you can do that, and that's how you will finish that row to make it look like the rest of your rows after you've got the correct number of rows. But you see I've got all those holes. You have to bind off to fill those in. So I'll link that video below, so you can go check that out if you're ready for that. I hope you enjoyed that tiny Tunisian tip. It is always my goal to help you grow confidently in your craft. I would love it if you would check out the description for other related links, including the link to my tiny Tunisian tip playlist, so you can check them all out. I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. That way YouTube will notify you when I post more tips. Thank you so much for joining me today, and happy Tunisian crocheting!